to Treknicity, a Star Trek podcast where we hitch a ride on the wagon train to the stars. I'm Lars.
And I'm Patrick. Yeah. Every week, just every fucking week, you try to turn this into dad joke central. One of these days, I'm just gonna find a large truck, step in front of it, and explode, unalive myself 37 times in a row, or not. Either way, let's do the damn show.
In this third episode of the seventh and final season of Treknicity, we present you with just screw it. In the third episode of the seventh and final season of Treknicity, we present to you a recap of the second episode of season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds entitled Ad Astra Per Aspera. Have at it.
Yeah.
Because apparently my mouth is full of rocks tonight.
Yeah. Needless to say, this almost got ham-fisted, but this is definitely better than the first episode. She's a good one.
Yeah.
So let's get into this. And obviously, we start with our previously, which is all about Una getting locked up.
Back up that starship. Don't forget to tell people this contains spoilers.
Yeah, spoilerific. Always spoilerific. But then again, if you're watching us and you haven't already watched the show, why the hell not? Okay, so the first scene we get is a family sitting there. The young one happens to be Una. She's got her leg all messed up, but she's doing the glowy shit with it, like she always did. But we cut immediately to Captain Patel talking to Una and basically offering a plea bargain. She gets to quit. She doesn't do jail time. It's a dishonorable discharge. It's like, you're out, but we're not going to give you any shit.
It's mostly so Starfleet can save face.
Yeah, it's the see. However, Pike goes to find a lawyer on an Illyrian world, where, of course, the atmosphere isn't good for him, but the Illyrians are just fine on it. But he decides that it's more important to get the lawyer than to be breathing. Luckily, that gets him in pretty quick. He meets Nira, who is the lawyer. He argues with her, trying to convince her to take the case. Ultimately, despite the fact she really doesn't like the Federation or Starfleet, he manages to convince her. Of course he does, because otherwise the plot doesn't happen. But once she gets there, Una obviously says no to the plea agreement, and Starfleet decides to crank up the punishment and let's just throw her away, lock it up, throw away the key, make her into the example. Roll credits. So yeah, it's a setup, and it's like, oh no, she's in the frying pan. We already know that she's going to be there for the rest of the season, so how are they going to get out of this one is our question.
Yeah, it was either going to be a situation where they do something, clever and interesting, or they just, kind of MacGuffin the crap out of it. Thankfully, I would say it's the former.
Yeah, luckily they do a Picard in Measure of a Man on this one. Maybe even better than that. And that's saying something because we're dealing with Picard here. But not in this episode. So, Nira, the lawyer, gets checked into Una's quarters. Lon's there. She's kind of suggesting that maybe if they got the information somebody got the information illegally, that might be a way to throw this court case out as a possibility. Meanwhile, lovers Captain Patel and Pike are sitting around, and he wants to take the stand. She talks to him friendly for a little bit, then turns it into an interrogation and points out why he is not going to be taking the stand. Because otherwise, if he gets asked, when did you know? And we find out later, it's 4 months. Yeah, he's in deep shit. Long story short.
Yep, because he knew about it and he said nothing.
Meanwhile, Ortegas is sitting and watching Spock talking to another Vulcan, and I'm not 100% sure on the name, but I think it's Pasalk. He's the Vulcan asshole. We're just gonna call him the Vulcan asshole because he is.
Yeah.
And Mbenga shows up, explains to Ortegas that, yeah, you can tell by the body language. Sure, they're not saying much, but yeah, theirs is not a happy conversation. Spock walks over, apologizes for his outburst. Literally, they're sitting there, and there's almost no movement, of course. So yeah, obviously the other guy's a complete asshole. So La'an is on the warpath trying to find some information. She wants personal logs. Now, of course, Uhura's the one to go to, but she says, "Nyota, please," and Uhura says, "Nope, fuck off. You're not getting stuff. That would be breaking regulations, and we're not breaking regulations to save Una's ass. Already enough regulations broken here." So, good points for Nyota Uhura. So we finally cut to the trial. So Una obviously drops in the not guilty plea after they read off the holy shit, sedition, 20 years, chucked out of Starfleet, your ass is gone. Yeah, your life is over. So prosecution opens. In this case, it's what's her name? Captain Batel's handling the prosecution. She basically lays out the case genetic engineering's all bad and stuff because it's playing God, it can turn to stuff because eugenics wars. So, yeah, I do not have names written every spot. Nira, okay. So, Nira comes for the defense. Nira explains that at some point in history, including especially Earth history, all kinds of discrimination was legal. Discrimination against queer folk, black people, slavery was legal. Basically that entire list. And I will point out at this point, just because it's relevant to the casting and the meta commentary, that the actress they got to play Nira, the Illyrian, is black, to just add that extra little chunk of weight to it. So, but she points out that genetic modification, especially when it's a cultural practice like with the Illyrians, is the same kind of thing. They're being persecuted for their beliefs, and that's the whole point. So first on the stand is Robert April. He talks up how good Una is, and ultimately, though, he says he wouldn't have sponsored her because, of course, the law says that. From there, where is it? Nira keeps going on and on, though, about the Prime Directive, which she cites at least 3 times he broke it. But let's be honest, every Starfleet captain breaks it. But ultimately, Nira overreaches. Pisses off pretty much all the Admiralty, and all of April's testimony is thrown out at that point because it turned into basically her trying to indict Starfleet, the Federation, which is pretty much Una points out immediately after that. Are you trying to defend me, or are you trying to score points? Because it very much looks like she's trying to score points. So we cut to a little bit later. We get La'an, Spock, and Mbenga all on the stand, and they're going back and forth. They cut between everybody telling about how important Una's been and how she's responsible in some cases, La'an specifically, for her being alive, and how there'd be a lot more dead people if she hadn't done that and if she hadn't been there. Spock gets the best quip with when he's asked if he believes she was hiding something. He says, yes. And it turns out a love of Gilbert and Sullivan, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody speaks to her character as in she is the shit. No question. which is frustrating because we find out the La'an specifically wants the personal logs because she thinks that's hers, the one she made. I think it was the episode where they had the virus running all over the ship. Ghosts of Illyria, to be exact. She made a personal log that did out Una as Illyrian. And her biggest concern is that if Una could be tossed out, she is La'an, Nooney, and Singh. As in, there's Khan blood running through those veins, and she's concerned that she might be the one that gets bumped out. She might get bumped out next for genetic manipulation. Nira, of course, talks to her about how beautiful she is and how she shouldn't be ashamed of her heritage and all of that. But she also kind of thinks, so it might be who would benefit to outing Una. That's the person we need to find, because that's the person that is absolutely responsible. Una gets on the stand finally. She drops the title of the episode, which is Ad Astra Per Aspera. Roll credits. Which means to the stars through hardship. It's kind of symbolic of why she joined Starfleet despite being an Illyrian. She talks about how genetic modification is their heritage, how they had to hide who they were or be arrested. It's basically the other story that we've heard that especially being Pride Month, we hear that a lot. We hear these kind of stories a lot. People having to hide who they are just so they are not persecuted, which is pretty much what she describes. At some point, trying to hide that, that scene in the beginning was where she broke her leg, and they had to find a doctor in the middle of the night, an Illyrian doctor, to treat her so that she wouldn't be outed. Eventually, the planet they were on, they separated between Illyrian and non-Illyrian. Her family passed enough that they went with the non-Illyrians. And we find out that that's when she left Nira behind, and that's kind of where the core of the animosity was, is they were childhood friends. Then we find out who turned Una in. She turned herself in. And she did so because she was tired of hiding, and she was trying to essentially force Starfleet to live up to their actual ideals rather than the whole genetics bullshit. So it cuts to that's how the defense ends. The problem is Vulcan asshole decides to get up, and he starts questioning Una about when Pike knew. We find out that's 4 months, and basically his closing, we cut to closing arguments. He basically is talking about logic rather than using your head, indicating Pike's the next to be hanged, and of course he wants a guilty verdict because he's a dick. Nira, on the other hand, closes with this: Starfleet Code 8514, which basically talks about people who are fleeing persecution, including for cultural reasons, who are seeking safety and seeking asylum and turning themselves in. They get asylum, and it's generally up to the discretion of a captain. Una fits all three of these. So, of course, we get Starfleet admirals doing their usual equivocation bullshit to put her back on the Enterprise with a not guilty verdict, and everybody's happy. Except that Vulcan asshole, of course, because he's an asshole. So, we cut our final scene is them in the transporter room. Everybody applauds Nira, the civil rights attorney. She points out the Enterprise is definitely better than the rest of Starfleet, mainly because they have an Illyrian first officer. And that's how we get number one back on the Enterprise. The end.
I was really quite surprised at how they got one over on the Vulcan. I would have thought, given the fact that he practices law, he would have been very familiar with any potential defenses they may try to employ, and that one just went slipped right past him.
Well, that's probably because it's probably because how was he going to defend against that one?
But still, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's logical to be aware of all potential pitfalls in one's case.
Fair enough. But then again, he might have looked at it as a cut and dried case and that there is no logical defense.
Possibly, but yeah, I thought it was kind of milk toast on that one.
Okay, so let's talk about this episode. We basically find out how pissed off the Illyrians really are about the Federation's genetic modification laws. I mean, that was the big thing in this episode.
And I think, to be fair, I mean, and canonically speaking, those laws have been in place ever since the eugenics wars, the end of the eugenics wars. They were in place before Starfleet was even a thing, or the Federation, because the whole thing with Khan, and then we see in episodes of Enterprise the issues with the surviving augments. It's I mean, that stuff's been around for a while, but I bet you it was kind of like Starfleet's kind of like they let it slide for a bit, and then suddenly genetic modification is bad. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was just they had that in the history, and they were able to build a story around, and that's literally how this
it fits.
came about.
I mean, certainly it's not a bad. It's just more kind of like it's whatever. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. Again, there's some things you can forgive, and this is easily one of them.
Yeah. Now another theme that we see is the idea of somebody who is considered the other blending in for the sake of not being persecuted, or versus the idea that you should be proud of who you truly are and come out, which is, in a sense, parallels. Yeah, it parallels everything today.
It also casts the Federation in a very negative light for the first time. I mean, there are isolated incidents where the Federation or Starfleet has not looked the best, but this one really shined an ugly light on them.
Yeah, and it's something that has been in Starfleet's history since before and since then after the time frame we're in.
Right. So, again, it's one of those things where we're starting to see different aspects, really, truly different aspects.
I am wondering how much of the anti-woke bunch are going to scream about this episode, because yeah.
I'm sure
now,
there's gonna be plenty of them.
An interesting thing was the idea. Another interesting thing was sacrificing individuals to advance a larger civil rights cause. I mean, we've seen that plenty of times.
Yeah, I think it's an axiom. I really think it is. It's not ideal, but it is certainly something that I really hate to simplify the concept, but it's the best way I could describe it. And it's the whole adage that you have to crack a few eggs to make an omelet.
Yeah, and we see this today, especially in the trans debate. There's a lot of kids and teenagers that have to become activists because it's the only way they can survive. And they still watch laws basically taking away their health care past.
Yeah, but it perfectly shines a light on a very hot button topic that is in the forefront of discussions today.
Yeah. And thankfully the episode ends with where it should, with a step in the right direction, which is kind of how things happen. It takes time, and obviously, one, because canon doesn't allow it, and two, because obviously we got to have this debate in the 23rd, later in the 23rd, and then in the 24th century. Dr. Bashir jumps to mind, for example.
That's right. I still
That-
don't remember exactly that whole thing, so I'll be getting to it soon enough in DS9.
Well, the long story short is he is genetically enhanced because he was a slow kid. His parents had him genetically enhanced, and he was able to pass as brilliant but normal. And then they have the other ones that come in that all know him as well, and they're all kind of messed up. And I'd say if they were presented now, they would be considered probably on the autism spectrum in some way.
Probably, yeah, yeah,
But this was the '90s, so
yeah.
they probably handled not with the most sensitivity, but the point is, they were basically a group of Sheldons.
Yeah,
If I was gonna
a lot of Asperger's
pull from
level,
yeah,
level people, high functioning autistic people.
I'm tempted to do the Asperger promo, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that one. So, yeah.
Anyway.
Overall, it was a good, solid episode. As you mentioned, it was a slow burn. It was designed primarily to shine the light on a very important topic right now. I think it was well placed given the fact that that the episode is airing during Pride Month. So yeah, I mean, definitely
Dab in the middle.
Yeah,
Like
good good episode. Definitely continue to build that good base, and yeah.
So yeah, can't wait to see what they do next week.
Speaking of that, that's all the time we have for this episode of Treknicity. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Apparently, I can't speak because my tongue is all tied. Please be sure to check us out on all of our wonderful freaking socials right up there, right above us. Or you can go to our YouTube channel at redshirtgeeks.tv, where you can look back at the last 9 years of content.
Where Lars is probably less babbly.
Less. In some cases, more babbly. I'm Lars.
I'm Patrick.
And remember to go boldly and to rock out, which is Spock out. We will see you next time.